Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to not Captain America, Marvel Avengers. We should be, by my guesstimation, at the last level of Age of Ultron, and I would have a hard time believing that we're gonna get a third movie integrated into this game. If it would be Civil War, almost certainly.
Altitude is 18,000 and climbing. Lifeboat secure to deploy.
Maria Hill
Disengage in 3,
and
2, take them out.
Nick Fury Jr. Both getting reintroduced to the story at the last second.
Shield? This is what Shield's supposed to be.
This is not so bad.
Let's load him up.
So Shield is gonna come in and save the day, and it somehow ends up with making Shield look fairly good, and yet it makes the Avengers look fairly bad in Civil War. Okay. We're in open world section. You need a vehicle. Unless he can jump through vehicle animations. You know what? You probably don't need a vehicle, you just walk around like a normal person. This once again makes it feel like there's probably an open world segment that is around Sokovia, which that then brings about an interesting question as far as just who is or how the open world parts of the gameplay are going to actually play. If I have to transport myself and fast travel to multiple locations, that's going to be weird. Maybe there will be some kind of teleportations, shortcuts, or trains, but even that would be fairly weird. If LEGO games are going to have an open world segment, it needs to be a connected open world segment, and I would argue I do think they should probably have open world segments. Although in all fairness, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit open world segments weren't particularly the best. Because much like the Hobbit in the Lord of the Rings movies, that was very much a story of walking from one point in the far west to one point in the far east, and having a few adventures along the way. Okay, so we freed some people, and you can see them very roughly jump magically into the lifeboat, which, if that was not going to be animated better, I don't know why they bothered to show us that cutscene, particularly since I wasn't looking in that direction. There's an inconsistency here between whether Ultron is trying to drop a big boulder of a city on something else to cause some kind of extinction event somehow, or whether Ultron is trying to actively kill or capture individual humans in Sokovia. I would think that that Ultron's valuation of the individual lives of the Sokovian citizens would be extremely low, and he'd probably just ignore them completely. That would be the more logical path, certainly, is to hunker down and have just an entire army of robots protecting you, Ultron, and protecting the mechanics that Ultron is using to specifically make Sokovia float. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. But I guess what's happening is this is Quicksilver getting to save the day before he dies off. Which, once again, this Age of Ultron does really feel like a movie that should have just been called Quicksilver and Wanda and should have been more focused. You know, I guess I'm supposed to be reflecting these back with my shield, and it does seem like it kind of reflects things back, but at a delay, so odds of hitting the ship seem to be fairly low. That took a lot of work. Then we're gonna build yet a third item in basically the same area. Alright, so they drop, they run away. That should be the last of it. I shouldn't then have the camera taken away from me to show me a rough animation that's not even finished of the lifeboats flying away. Yeah, it does definitely feel like the game producer level, the game director level, is part of the problem here. Like, there are some shots. So if there was a shot director in this game, which most games I don't think have roles that are designated as shot director, but there definitely are cinematic decisions being made here that were unnecessary and wasted resources and just kind of arbitrary. Alright. Looks like we need Wanda, but we don't have Wanda. I don't know if we... I don't know where Captain America even is. We may need Captain America. Notice how his shield stays outward when he jumps until he grabs onto a ledge, and then it magically disappears. And when he gets those ledges, it magically goes on his back. Those would have been better transition animations to make sure to have finished, instead of this animation where they come out of the elevator and then aren't even programmed well enough to make it around the corner. That animation probably was helpful. This one, not so much. You could have seen a single animation reused at that point to say all the lifeboats have been full. And then here we have a loading sequence trying to hide the fact that the game, it takes forever to load some sections.
It's time to put a stop to him once and for all.
Although probably on my computers these levels would almost instantaneously load, but I imagine for their target system of like a Switch or a Wii U, the loads probably were fairly bad.
Now this is going to be a good story.
Now I wonder if we're going to end up doing a Iron Man flies around all of Sokovia sequence. Yep, I guess we are. And that was the second time we've ever seen them use the checkpoint indicator. So flying around the hover.
Looks like you're gonna have to get over there and push it.
This is another example of just having an ensemble movie where there's just too many characters. Alright, so we need to hit B when we're slightly over here. And then, are we holding B or are we tapping B? I think you're tapping B. And maybe pointing in a specific direction. I suppose the idea here, this is the side-scrolling shooter clone, was supposed to replace some of the vehicle missions, but I don't know if I really buy that as a smart decision. Although this doesn't feel awful, this does feel like
Potential for human casualties here is approximately 64%. I would recommend focusing on the lifeboats to decrease probability.
there we have the new AI Friday replacing Jarvis, whose AI was put in Vision, which we haven't seen Vision in quite a while since he was introduced as a character. You should press Y and swap over to War Machine just to see this. It honestly wouldn't have been a bad idea had the game decided to have side-scrolling shooting elements in it. That would at least have been something different for a LEGO game. We've seen in some of the Batman games they've tried to have almost like Pac-Man type mini games, and so there is an idea there. And considering it's a kids game, introducing kids to an old school game as a kind of mini game or a single level is not a terrible idea by any means. A little Tetris here, a little Arkanoid, a little Pac-Man, a little Pong. All of those could easily have been heavily relied on. And I think most of those games probably would fall under parody or out of copyright in general. It's a little shocking that there haven't been more Flappy Bird or Match 3 game mini games in LEGO games, or just memory elements where you have to match two cards. There's a little bit of that we've seen, but not a lot. Like Vision seems to have some magical powers.
Ultron sure has this whole supervillain thing working for him. We might have to wait for the right opportunity and strike him when he's vulnerable.
And here's our final boss fight. For a second there, I thought this level was only going to be 9 minutes long. Am I supposed to switch to a different character? Normally that's what should be happening. Alright, let's see. What can Vision do? Kinda nothing. Over here we have this save point, if we can save while we're being destroyed. This level I found to be a specifically badly designed area. I don't know if this is where the final fight with Ultron happened in the comic books, but just having a machinery inside of a dilapidated church felt like the movie itself ran out of some budget. And at a certain level, I guess that will be a growing feeling if the budgets keep going up and up and up for the the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you may go back and look at some of the other the original movies and think that they look fairly cheap. Like I imagine the original Iron Man doesn't look anywhere or feel anywhere as top notch as it once would have. Right, so unless Vision can laser, which he can laser, good. Looks like we're gonna drop a bell on him. And then we'll come over here and laser the bell. I don't feel like they fully explained a backstory or reasoning behind Ultron's decision. He probably needed a few more maniacal evil speeches, and it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea had Ultron been introduced in the first Avengers movie and people had gotten to know him and fought alongside him, and then have a betrayal instead of him effectively being completely evil from day one. And I don't think Hydra even plays a role, really, in this story. So I'm just smashing buttons to accomplish QuickTime events. Yeah. It might have been better if there was at least a bit of an indication that Hydra reprogrammed Ultron or caused Ultron to be evil. Because what you have is a problem here is that the scepter, Loki's scepter, seems to be full of an AI that is just by default evil. And that's weird. Certainly, because then that implies that maybe all Asgardian technology might have AI in it that is by default evil. And that implies that really Ultron is the Asgardians' fault. Or Loki's fault. And if it is going to be Loki's fault, they needed to bring Loki back and have Ultron speak in Loki's voice or spout some level of loyalty to Loki. That would almost make a lot of sense, that if Ultron was a lackey of Loki. A lot of energy pulses and spheres. They're trying to show off some visual effects. This probably was one of those games where they were trying to get their engine working more. Just need to somehow figure out a way to hit this guy wall. So is he supposed to pick up the hammer? Yeah.
Son of Odin, and as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say. Are you ready?
Rhodey, get the rest of the people on board that carrier. On. Avengers,
So
time to work for
Vision once again is worthy to hold hold the hammer Mjolnir, which they don't even bother to say her name, the name of the hammer, which is a problem for a LEGO game because it should be more educational and informative just for some of the people. There is a potential scenario here where some of the kids playing the LEGO games may be just slightly too young to, or may not have enough attention span to sit through a movie like Age of Ultron. There's a ton of stuff happening on the screen. Alright. So we now, everybody in the big last battle, fighting to protect Wanda and protect the core. Although, why do they need to protect the core? Is it the core that is it the core that is holding up Sokovia? So if it's broken, it drops Sokovia? I guess that might be the case. So maybe they are trapped now where they have to actively keep Sokovia floating until they can find a way to safely lower it down. I don't know if I scanned that right, but it seems like I probably did. And you hold B, and then that launches an energy pulse, which doing that accomplished something. And we now need Hawkeye and Quicksilver, which we haven't seen that do anything. Quicksilver has red hair and red gloves. I don't know why. Like it's in his name. He's supposed to be white-haired, silver-haired. Oh. In his code name. Age of Ultron probably, I guess in-game tries to make the same argument, and in a sad statement it is kind of just comic books in general. There are deep philosophical arguments being made in some of these conflicts. For instance, Ultron is making the argument that for humanity to be free, there can't be a organization that is super powered and unchecked that would hold and maintain the status quo. And there is definitely a lot of argument to agree with that. This is a hyper-militarization of the police and creation of an eventual police state argument being made by Ultron, and he personally values freedom so much that he's willing to become the bad guy to take out the Avengers, to give himself freedom and others freedom, and potentially even kill all of humanity to give himself more freedom. And that's great and all, but none of that's getting explained in the movie, and definitely not in the game. When you get to Endgame and Thanos trying to wipe out half of all life in the universe, he is making a logical to a fault argument about resource management and how there's apparently in this fictional universe a definite overpopulation and lack of resources. Of course, if you follow that there is a magical glove that can do pretty much anything, then why couldn't the magical glove create infinite amounts of resources, or at least double the amount of resources, or instill in the minds of all of the universe a a mentality of conserving and reducing usage of resources. It is the way Thanos implements his plan is childish and silly, by no doubt. But the concept behind it is something that should be thought about and debated. It is a reduction of harms argument that once again does not get explained. And I guess that probably boils down to the fact that comic book writers think that they're these genius, brilliant writers, and they really aren't. So they try to play with deep philosophical ideas, and they can't do it. They also can't do it because they have to keep any concept short and sweet in the length of a comic book, or maybe a few episodes. We're in a QuickTime event and there's just so much going on I couldn't even tell that was what was happening. So I'm supposed to be pressing these buttons so Vision can defeat Ultron. Knock him out to a different area. And here you have 3 different people attacking. And I guess I'm supposed to tap X, but it wasn't showing me that. Yeah, so I'm supposed to just tap X, X, and X. And here we have another cutscene that's stuttering a little bit while it's trying to play. It could be part of the reason why this game seems so unpolished. It might have been that there was a major problem with just the video playback in the pre-rendered cutscenes, but I don't see how that really could have been the case. Frankly, they could have just rendered all of the pre-made cutscenes. So does Ultron actually escape? Ultron never got his organic body, so I don't know why he would eat or drink a milkshake, and the milkshakes, again, are just repeated way too often as a joke. And here you have Quicksilver saving everybody, saving Hawkeye.
Boss, power levels are way below optimum.
Reroute everything. You get one
That
shot of this.
very well might be the first time a death has been shown on screen for a LEGO game.
Need you back in the church.
Yeah, I wonder, did Ultron escape, or I guess not. It would be hard to bring back Ultron as an enemy, and I doubt any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will bring back any enemies other than Loki again, because there's just so many to go through. Although they've also taken kind of the top tier enemies in Thanos. There's a DC character that is effectively the same as Thanos, who wants to just enslave and kill everybody because he's in love with death, and it's equally as stupid a reason, but I feel like it's a probably better motivator than I want to balance out the universe by reducing it in half. I don't know why you'd even reduce it in half. Why not reduce it down to 1%? Alright, we're at 30%, 30 minutes, not a percentage. So the question becomes, if I hit continue story, am I going to get any more gameplay, or am I going to get a cutscene and the credits? I'm going to risk it here. I think we're going to get a cutscene and credits. and then unless the game specifically unlocks Civil War levels, we should be into the open world stuff. And I assume there's no gameplay level here because you wouldn't have a level start with a cutscene. Well, you shouldn't, at least. So they basically blew up all of Sokovia. Which I suppose that could make sense.
We did it. The job's finished. Now I need you to turn this bird around, okay? We can't track you in stealth mode.
Here you have the Hulk deciding to leave Earth. What's funny is that music is the song at the end of that's played at the end of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which that's a very weird song to choose.
The last one.
You were supposed to be the last.
I suppose we are both disappointments.
Although maybe that song is used for other things too.
Bearably naive.
But that's what I recognize it from.
I was born yesterday.
So yeah, the last copy of Ultron is destroyed.
So it doesn't count. No, it's not like a
Hulk
person
gets
with a hammer.
leaves the planet.
You can wield the hammer, you can keep the mind stone. Someone has been playing
And then
a
you
tricky
see
game and has
Thor.
made pawns of us.
Thor Ragnarok is next time you see Hulk.
Besides this one, there's nothing that can't be explained.
And he's a fairly different character at that point.
That man has no regard. I'm gonna miss him though, and you're gonna miss me. It's gonna be a lot
And
of
see,
painful tears.
this is my question: is why couldn't he have used that teleportation method previously to get back home
You all right?
at the end of Avengers 1 instead of using the Tesseract? Unless the Tesseract is the thing that powers the light, the Rainbow Bridge.
You're not a team.
Let's beat him into shape.
All of these characters were indicated as like they were going to be the next generation of Avengers, and pretty much all of those characters so far have been forgotten. I feel like they probably will be callback characters and maybe trainers and leaders for a new generation of Avengers, but I don't know how well that's actually going to play and sell. And again, this feels like this might be a shot-for-shot remake of the credits at the Age of Ultron, and this is where I would say the game director, the person in charge, should have not spent that budget. That's a lot of animation, that's a lot of effort for still images for behind the credits. It almost feels like, looking at the credits like this could have easily been the last Marvel Cinematic movie, Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and maybe there was a small chance of that being the case, but I would say Civil War in particular, since they managed to negotiate to bring in Spider-Man into the universe, I think at that point that solidified that there will almost always be a Marvel movie in development by Disney. And maybe recently, in 2020, a lot of things have changed. Maybe we would see a point in which Disney would slow down and not make Marvel movies, but I would heavily question that. Even if they were just going to reboot the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think they would do that. So compared to the first movie's levels, these levels were slightly better, but I would say you're probably talking 3 or 4% better. There's still a lot of lack of polish in this LEGO game compared to other ones. It is sadly still very much a case of you should play LEGO Star Wars and maybe only LEGO Star Wars, because everything else has some problems. I might slightly change my attitude on something like LEGO Harry Potter now that I have a computer that isn't going to cause micro stuttering. And I still would heavily recommend people play the LEGO games on consoles, because on a console it's not going to have those kind of problems. And this isn't really a game that benefits from if you're trying to turn it up to 1080p or 4K. The soft cell shaded LEGO glossy images and textures don't really benefit for higher resolutions anywhere as much as a hyper realistic 3D game would. But major transition problems, major inconsistencies with levels. It definitely would have been nicer if this game had come out 2 or 3 years later and they had worked on it some more. And particularly for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think you're in a good position where they could have done that. They didn't need to have a game like this release in the same year as Age of Ultron or the Avengers movie. I suppose one brand that LEGO has not touched would be Star Trek. Star Trek. Could they do that? Let me think. Has LEGO ever had a Star Trek product? No, I don't think they have. They've made a lot of money on Star Wars. Disney doesn't own any Star Trek. CBS Paramount did, but they had a contract with a production company, which might confuse the issue a little bit. But yeah, if you were gonna make a game where you did the good levels based on, if you were to do levels based on the good stories of the Star Trek original series, that was 3 seasons. I don't think the 3rd season was particularly good in the original series of Star Trek. You probably could get 10 to 20 good levels out of that and stretch that and take a lot of artistic license on that. And then if you're going to throw in the I believe it was 8 seasons of the Next Generation, and you just did the original series and the Next Generation, then you'd have a very long LEGO game. Or you could have Star Trek the original series, then the original the Next Generation, and then maybe at that point you throw in some combined elements for Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Enterprise and the other Star Treks that are, I guess, maybe even Picard. Here you see Stan Lee is worthy as a joke. Even the jokes at the end of the movies, though, really don't serve as well of a purpose as they would in the theaters, because you're still asking kids to watch an incredible amount of credits. Although they did, I think, speed up the credits here because it's not taking as long. I'd say the music was majorly improved in Age of Ultron sections, because it wasn't just a repetition of the exact same Avengers theme over and over again. The problem with doing like a LEGO Star Trek, which LEGO, if they're going to continue to make games, really are running out of things that they could license, and particularly Warner Brothers things that they can license. There might be like a Suicide Squad game you might think about making, but then you probably would have to just call it The Squad and not have the word suicide in the name for a Lego game. But the problem with Star Trek in particular is if they tried to get that license, they'd probably be told they have to do either the reboot movies or they have to heavily emphasize Star Trek Picard or the other Star Trek movie, that TV series that was relatively recent in a reboot too. I don't even remember the name of that series. But yeah, I don't know what else you would do. You could almost see doing a sports game like a Lego baseball where you just play as a baseball player, and then you have a bunch of side missions where you're doing other things and practicing just as Lego minifigures, and getting rid of a lot of the smashing in the mini games and the 3D 2D platforming. That'd be a very different game, but I could see skinning something like that. You could do the same with football, soccer, wrestling. Those would be different things that they could do and still use at least their animation and a lot of their technology, and take it away from action adventure games. Nobody's really writing new stories at any massive success rate. I would say even the Harry Potter series was surprisingly massively successful. You could do a Lego Doctor Who, and you could go through the history of the old Doctor Who episodes that are memorable and the new Doctor Who episodes that are memorable. And you could go that route. That would be a bit more niche of a product. Lego Dimensions did exist, and they did do a lot of side stories there. But Lego Dimensions was a Toys to Life product that they kind of abandoned. They abandoned the part where you actually had to buy real physical toys once Toys R Us went out of business, and then they eventually just abandoned that idea. But if you look at Lego Dimensions, you will see that they did have like an E.T. license and a Doctor Who license, Back to the Future license, a lot of licenses for characters that really wouldn't have made full-on good games, but they could put a character in there and do that. They probably should rethink Lego Dimensions and have a collection of pre-licensed characters that will just show up as playable characters in all future Lego games. And honestly, that would be the best ideas, that you would make kind of a Lego account, Lego game account, a TT Games account, and when you logged into that account, you always got the use of that skin for any future Lego game. Even if at some point they make the skins higher resolution, you can still play, should still be able to play with the old skins. And at a certain point, then what you've got is the equivalent of a Japanese gacha game, where you could potentially sell the skins for a few bucks as DLC, and then they would have this very good holding and useful value to them compared to buying DLC in LEGO MARVEL Avengers that gave you skins, but then they're only good for that one game. And I can't play as Spider-Man, for instance, in a Star Wars game, which that's where Lego Dimensions really did let people do that. And I'm sure that was slightly harder to negotiate, but those negotiations already happened too, so they could be redone fairly easily. Yeah, as I'm trying to think, There really, I don't think is. I'm looking to the left because I have a bunch of boxes from Lego Dimensions. A Lego Simpsons was in the Dimensions, but I don't think that would be age appropriate, really, or that interesting of a game. They probably should just commit to doing more Lego City things, and probably commit to doing more Lego individual properties, in the sense that there probably is a Lego Ninjago game, but there hasn't been one anytime recently. There's a new Monkey Kid series that they just started releasing.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
And there's the Glove and Thanos with none of the gems, although I think at Age of Ultron he probably should have had some gems. Alright. I think we're in the open world now. I don't think there's anything more. We have Moonstone, a character I don't even know who that is, but she definitely seems to have quite the cutout in her outfit. And Nick Fury with a bazooka. Alright. Yeah. Now if I go to space, I don't want to... Nope. Guess I don't want to do that. If it's going to say, am I sure? It's not telling me to go anywhere. It's not telling me to do anything. It didn't unlock any more levels. So I think we are done. And so we are 17.5% done. Going forward, we'll do about an hour worth of gameplay each episode, and we're gonna try and run around and figure out if we can get the red bricks first, because getting the red bricks will probably be the most important thing completely. Apparently if I hit X I'll see area totals, which tells me that in this specific area there's 140 gold bricks and 25 vehicles and 41 character studs and 13 Stanleys to be saved, which then also tells me that all 15 of the red bricks are probably in the levels. So I guess I will just go to space. I think we need to do that. Here we have a loading section where we're flying. Yeah, that's an example of it actually taking quite a lot of loading. Alright. So you can go to Washington, D.C., Manhattan, Barton's Farm, a shield base, Malibu. There's an Ant-Man level. There's a Ready Aim Fire level. There's a Lack of Insight level. Have we done any of these? Avengers Assemble, Master of Evil, Rail Hydra. Yeah, these are the levels that we did. This is an awkward system. It kind of feels like it is the same system that was before. You can go to Asgard, though. Here's Sokovia, which I guess Sokovia is a North African country. Here's a classic Black Panther. There's no way we did a classic Black Panther level. So some of these we've done, some of these we haven't. These little pillars of light kind of feel smart, but I'm not sure they're the best system. Maybe Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Korea Prospects. And the colors, I don't know what the colors mean. If purple means that it hasn't been done, or what. Classic Captain Marvel. Alright, so if I hit this, then that tells us the level. So this does open up the possibility that I would have to basically go through any section that I've already done in free play mode to try and find the red bricks before I go any further. And I just don't want to do that. I want to give it at least a couple of hours of running around Manhattan, but I do think we are going to have to break things up a bit. So we may do a level like this and do a story mode, since there's several DLC things. And that this is what the DLC, I guess, really means, is that they built this whole world concept and this globe concept, which they could have flooded it certainly with a lot more levels if this sold well. But I don't know why they would have thought it would have sold well for as unpolished as the main game is. So yeah, I think what we'll have to do is, I think we've got our charter. Travel to this area, are you sure? Yeah. And here's the skydiving section. I don't know what abilities Moonstone has. And see, that's just showing you clouds while it's loading.
I know you probably have your hands full right now, but there's some pretty bad stuff going down in the nearby area that could really use your attention.
We're just gonna get. So we've got somebody asking for help and screaming for help. So she has laser beams and particles, and we've got radars. And as far as extras, we don't know really where to buy attract studs, which would be helpful. Targeting the second player, not super helpful. We could put in a bunch of codes if we wanted to. But these LEGO games do tend to let you pretty much collect everything you need to collect anyway. So I seriously doubt we'll run into a scenario where I don't have enough studs to buy all the characters, or I don't have enough studs to buy all the extras. So I do think next recording we will just run around, get a few gold bricks, maybe. Like, what can we actually get? We can get gold bricks and save some Stan Lee characters. We can try to figure out some different characters. We need to figure out if we can actively swap between characters, or if we have to find like a phone booth or something to swap characters, because in one of the Lego City games that would be a case. That is also certainly a series that they probably should commit to, is that every 4 years there should just be a new Lego City game, because that makes a lot of sense. Even if it is just going to be an original story written by an intern, it gives them something consistent that they know they can sell, because there will always be a Lego City line sold as far as actual Lego toys. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.